Okay, so we start. I think we are right now at it is 10 a.m. already, and we don't want the sessions to delay because of latecomers. Uh, Good morning, everybody, dear participants, uh, respected speaker, and my dear colleagues, and a very good warm welcome to all of you on the day two of our FDP, Advanced Research Capabilities in Architecture and Planning. Today we have with us in the first session Professor Dr. Indrani Chakraborty to deliver on on research design aspects of the research methodology portion. So now I would like to hand over the platform to Mahima, today's rapporteur and anchor for the sessions. Mahima, you can give a small brief introduction about Madam, and then we can start her session. Shikha,
On
good morning.
Good morning, everyone. I welcome you all to the second day of our online FDP. Good morning and welcome back. Advancing research capabilities in architecture and planning, as the FDP is called, we will take you forward to the day 2 and session 4 of our FDP. We hope you had a restful evening and we are ready for another day of learning and exploration. Yesterday, we had some insightful session by our esteemed speakers on various aspects of research in architecture and planning. And today, we will have another exciting liners of speakers who will share their experiences and expertise on different research methodologies and approaches, which is the way forward for it. So today, Dr. Chakrabarti will be sharing her expertise on research, design, and architecture and planning. Before starting off, I would like to give a brief introduction of Dr. Indrani Chakrabarti. Ma'am, we are delighted to have you with us today. Dr. Chakrabarti is a seasoned professional in the field of architecture and planning with over 21 years of experience. She has an impressive educational background, having completed her B.Arch from IIEST Shibpur, Masters and PhD from IIT Kharagpur, and has worked with prestigious organizations such as DFID India, World Bank, and Tata Housing Group. She has a wealth of experience in academia and research with over 40 technical papers, 11 working papers, and one book to her credit. Her research interests include resilient architecture, set design, and urban panorama, neighborhood planning, as well as water conservation. Please welcome me in joining Dr. Indrani Chakrabarti. Ma'am, it's a pleasure to have you with us today for for the second day of our FDP.
Thank you, Mahima,
Most
for
welcome, ma'am.
this wonderful introduction of me. So, after yesterday's brainstorming uh, kickstart of how the research to be addressed and how the research to be framed and all, today we are in this third module of this FDP. So the idea of this module is how we can design the research program, because all the research, be it in the undergrad level, be it in the postgrad or PhD level, or even in your professional field, research is needed, because research is not only gaining the degree as per se, the PhD degree or some other degrees, uh, but it also the idea of research is to give some of the input of that outcome of your research to the pool of the knowledge that is already been there, and you are just adding some drops to it. And that is the whole idea of research. How well a subject is researched can be best adjudged, how best the outcome you are putting into the pool of knowledge or pool of information. Next slide, please. So as we congregate together, the professional from the field of highly acclaimed professionals of architects and planners, the architecture talks about design of spaces, building spaces, and its microenvironment, and the planning talks about obviously the design and consideration at the urban and regional level. So there are some overlaps, and there are some areas which are supplementing each other. So if we talk about architecture at occupant scale, you cannot think it without talking about the space design at urban scale, or taking consideration of the community participation. And if you're talking about at building scale, the material, the technology, you cannot talk about the city building bylaws and all. So all are interrelated. Next, please. So the starting point of any research is you are either you have identified some problem through your professional career, or you have been given some problem which you need to sort out, or you need to get the solution of it. So we have some pre-acquired knowledge, and with that base, we are examining that particular issue or the problem methodically and systematically, and so that we can get the best solution for it. So the whole process will be organized and summarized to form some sort of a concept or theory. So the first part of any research is to identify the research gap, and that research gap should be through proper literature study. While we are talking about research design, as we all know, and this question may come up, what is the difference between the research design and research methodology? Why do we need research design? See, think of yourself. You start a day, you plan your day ahead, and you accomplish all the works that you have planned. That is research design. Means you have thought that after going to my workplace, I'll accomplish this particular job with teamwork. That is research design. And while reaching to your office, the team you will be selecting based on their competence will be the research methodology. So how you are accomplishing the task of research is research methodology, and the blueprint of your research is how will you conduct your research, the time frame, the cost, the sampling design, the study area, the scale of your design, the method of interviewing people, the method of collecting data, the method of representing the data, the method of analyzing the data, and the final outcome will be part of research design. Next, please. So in this process, so it's not that you are the first one who is doing this research and will add some or the other information to this research information pool of information. The information is already there in form of books, in form of other digital media, in form of journals and other things, and you are adding to that. So what is the level of uniqueness, what is the level of trustworthiness that will be your final success of your research. Suppose if we talk about, for any research design, anyone cannot adopt any sort of path, right? We always try to patternize our choice. Like, I always like to wear red during some special days. So that is the pattern of my choice. So the patterning is the preliminary step for your research design, and that will fetch the final successful outcome of your research. So what brings the trustworthiness of any research? First is reflexivity of approach. What is that? Reflexivity of approach is when the researcher is well aware of its own context and the potential effects of the position and all aspects of research. Is flexible. Any research cannot be rigid, and it should be universal. It has to be a universal application. It can be interpreted. It should have the updated data. It should have the critical analysis pattern, and it has to be related to the context. That brings the research a trustworthiness. Next, please. So as I am saying, doing research is a continuous process of searching a solution for a problem. So how will you select a research problem? Selecting a research problem is as important as to obtain the result of it. First, the source of problem. Which is the source that...
Yes, madam, please continue.
So we are good now?
Yes.
We are good now.
Yes.
Was this the slide or there is some problem?
Yes. This is the slide. I'm just gaining the momentum. So the potentiality of a research problem based on the background of that particular issue that pertains to particular city or particular building type, or it may be a problem, it may be an issue, it may be you want to upgrade or you want to challenge some theory. So whatever it is, it must have some background, which gives, because your research cannot be only yours. Until and unless you communicate to the world, it has no meaning. Because ultimately you are adding to the pool of information. So the background gives the preparedness of the reader or the reviewer who is reading the research paper or your research thesis, maybe your work, a background. How have you approached or how have you conceived that particular issue pertaining to that area? So that is how the background plays a role. And it's very pragmatic, or you may say very diplomatic, to take non-controversial issues pertaining to particular religion or other beliefs. So we are trying to avoid that part. So that may be a hot topic for any mass communication platform, but it cannot be it is not a very good research topic per se. So, and of course, if I have interest in some domain, and I am taking I'm taking the research topic out of my domain or out of my competency. Competency is much more important than my interest. So if I am not competent enough to carry on the research, so there is no point of choosing that topic. Next, please. So these are the resources which researchers should have a look, or should consider before selecting a research problem. Time, money or fund, or source of fund, size of research. Size of research is very important. In the beginning, as we all, because now from bachelor's to PhD is almost negligible component of people are doing. As we are moving from master's to PhD, many of us, or per se after master's or doing bachelor's, the size of the research is we cannot perceive the consequence of taking the wrong size of the research. Your research should have the optimum size. So to say, if you are doing a research, your period is 6 months, and you have taken a regional water management plan, or you have taken the footprints, how the footprints, building footprints have effect on the greenery of the city, or something like that. So it is not compatible to your time. So time, fund, the infrastructure setup you have, the colleagues and the other stakeholders you have, who will help you, who will give you, who are the informants of the of your research, the literature and material available for your research, how will you get the data, and how will you obtain them? Because accessing data, particularly in our country, will be very tricky, because all the researches, all the project works that had been done previous years, or we are doing right now, almost 99% of them are not archived. Archive means you cannot access the historical data. Next, please. So as we are talking about the resources, as we are talking about the things, this all gives you some food for thought. Like, what is the purpose of this research that will obtain the goal, or the aim and objective, the issue, the data, the observation, experiences, all this will come together, and you will see that you have the issue has some attributes in terms of variables. Like, some of them are dependent and independent variables, and they have interrelationship. So that interrelationship framework will finally form a theory or a concept or principle. So this is our final outcome. And for this, all these squares that had been highlighted here has some or the other input in your research design. And mind it, any if you think that, okay, I have planned my research at the very beginning of my thing, I have sorted it out and I'll go accordingly. It may not always be applicable. You may have to iterate or revise your design time to time based on the, because whatever you are doing is basically a blueprint. Until and unless you have done the task or you have finished the task, because one is in your mind or one is the mind game or the mind map you are making, and another one is how you are accomplishing, how you are completing that particular task. So based on that, you may need to modify your research design time to time. Next, please. So these are, I have stated 3 of the example from 3 premier institute of India, IIT Roorkee, where how they have chosen the thesis topic and what is their objective. Because objectives, if you have clear objectives and if you accomplish those objectives, you will finally come to the solution of your problem. So one of this is from IIT Roorkee. One lady from there had done children's independent mobility in urban neighborhood of India, a case of Kolkata. In that, what she had done, first, to understand the theoretical and empirical relationship between children's independent mobility and urban neighborhood. And what is, if I say, what is the problem? What is the research problem that she had identified out of this pool of information? The information is mobility in urban neighborhood. There she found that there is one gray area or some areas which needs more intervention or more attention, that is children's independent mobility, or you can say children's mobility without any assistance. So for that, she had derived this 4 objectives. One is to get an idea what is there in literature, the relationship between CIM and urban neighborhood. Second, to identify CIM levels to local destinations with distinct typologies in urban Indian context. To analyze and compare in the influence of objectively measured built environment and perceived social environment on CIM levels. So the first one is basically the literature review per se. The second part is through some literature review, through some observation, through some case studies. The third objective, how to meet that, through some survey questionnaires that the researcher may have developed. And the final one is to the analysis of that surveyed questionnaire, and the first two outcomes of that, the first 2 objectives outcome are congregated, and finally it is pinned down in the strategies and guidelines for design of urban neighborhood. That's how the researcher had designed her thesis. Next, please. Next one is another another PhD thesis, decision support system for the end-use potential of rooftop rainwater harvesting in an urban metropolitan catchment. Case study, Kolkata metropolitan area. Here, the researcher had identified an issue which pertains to the potential end use, because as we all know, Kolkata lies in humid part of the country, and it has abundance of water resources, and it has abundance of rainfall as well, which appears as a threat in terms of flood. And some part of this Kolkata metropolitan area is also falling under water stress region. So this is the issue that the researcher had pointed out through some experience and literature study. Experience, maybe working at the very grassroots level with the the municipal bodies or urban local bodies per se. So the objectives stated here is to review literature available on rooftop rainwater harvesting and its applicability at plot level, because thus research is trying to focus on the building level rainwater harvesting end use, to find the probability of rainfall and its distribution pre-monsoon, monsoon, and post-monsoon period in humid West Bengal. Because as we all know, rainwater harvesting is majorly unsuccessful in many parts of the country due to we don't have the historical data, because during monsoon we have rainfall and we can use that harvested rainwater, and if we don't know the actual need or actual potentiality of that harvested rainwater, many of the rainwater becomes the woo for the occupants, building occupant, in terms of breeding center for the mosquitoes and all. So that is important. So for that we need historical data analysis. Third part, to identify the need for non-potable water uses in various types of building. So here the researcher already been focusing the non-potable uses of rainwater, because the potable uses has some implication which the researcher may have found out through some similar case studies. Maybe some case studies in Australia, they are some factors are cropping up in terms of use of grey water or harvested rainwater, some sort of that. The fourth point is to identify factors that are responsible for acceptance of harvested rainwater in urban catchment, which is the preliminary part of the major part of the research. And from that the whole decision support system model will be developed, which is the fifth objective of the research. Next, please. This is another interesting example from SPAV, School of Planning and Architecture, Vijayawada. Here the researcher not only identified the objective, but also specified the task that the researcher has to do under that particular objective. Take for example, the idea is to develop a slum water poverty index. So the first research objective is to identify the slum water poverty specific parameters through review of water poverty index model. And task under it is understanding the various existing water poverty index that is available over the world. So the researcher has to do similar case studies with similar outcome, or maybe different contextual case studies with similar outcome, and what are specific issues while applying this index or applying this index models. What are the issues that are faced by the users? Next objective is to examine the relevance of water poverty indicators for slums. So here the researcher is specific about slums, identified desirable tools that evaluates the water poverty issues at slum level, because slum level has different needs, different benchmark for water poverty, because you cannot say 120 is optimum for slum level, because of the different situation or different benchmark that the government have already proposed, or it's in the guideline. Third objective is to analyze the slum water poverty levels in the identified slum settlements. For that task, the researcher has 3 tasks: to understand and analyze slum water poverty index as a tool that helps analyzing the situation of the settlement. Task 2 is to analyze the impact of the SWPI for the identified settlement and to prioritize the critical parameters that affect the settlements. And finally, to develop a conceptual framework for slum water poverty index. And what is the utilization of that framework? That the already existing framework may be updated through this conceptual framework. Maybe some of the other factors which the researcher had identified in the objective 3 may be incorporated to the existing poverty index model. Next. So this is again back to our research design, and we need to understand the theory, how this research design concept came, because some way or the other we are doing some of the other research. It may be methodical, it may be passionate, it may be some way or the other, but we are doing some way or the other research in our field. But as we are talking about academic or professional research, so these are some of the theories that expert had already been stated. It's a blueprint of activities by Hassan, 95. 86, Kerlinger said, research design is a plan, structure, and strategy for investigation. Taken. Rosenthal and Rosno in 1991 stated that it's a detailed outline or plan for the collection and analysis of data. Next. So your research design is a rigorous process which has to be set with the advent of your research decision, and you must make that master copy of that blueprint to proceed further. It should be generalized. The process, the whole design has to be generalized, controlled, rigorous, empirical, systematic. It should have some reliability, validity, hypothesis to be incorporated, analytical, credibility, and it should be critical. Why? The last point is very important, and this last point will be coming again and again, because you must be critical about your process, about your approach, about the collection of data. Then only your research will be airtight. Then the outcome has some relevance to be incorporated in that pool. Anything and everything is not research until and unless it is going through all these processes. Your research is not foolproof. Merely influenced by some other work or merely having a reference of some other work won't suffice the purpose. You need to be critical about your research before anyone else gets critical about it. Next. So the function of a research design: research problem identification, justification of that research problem. So reviewing of literature has two distinctive characteristics in your whole research process. One, you need to review literature, and by reviewing literature, it's a heck lot of work. It's a like when you're rehearsing for some opera or some performance. It's something like that. So it has to be well versed with you, the whole work that had been previously done and what is the research gap. And second, you need literature review to get the idea of similar or opposite or related to case studies that had been done and how they have approached that particular research problem. So hypothesis, which comes from your research question, and it is, if you answer your research question in many other way, then it is worth of your time and energy. Data, how it will be collected and how will you present it, and finally how the data analysis are answering to your hypothesis testing. Next. It's quite evident that research design is fundamental of good research. Next. Next. So now all theories have gone. Now you have to roll up your sleeves and you need to sit down with your approach, with your whatever you have in your mind, and you need to put it in some form of black and white. It may be digital, it may be manual, doesn't matter. So you need to, there are 4 columns which has different question, and this question will finally guide you to design your own thesis. This is only very prescriptive. This you don't have to follow all those questions. You may develop, you may create a new question, but this is a sort of example. So what is your research purpose? That should be the first column. The data collection and data collection technique, analysis, and list of information, source of information. Some thesis may require book reference. Muskan, please mute your. So some research may require book reference. Some research may require observation. Some research may require some other information, some other guidelines, some other case studies, some other secondary surveys. So these are the list of information. So this is the 4th column, and you may add up columns as you may like. So it is your research. So the research purpose, why are you doing this research? What will be the outcome of your research? What will you do with the analyzed data? That is the research purpose. Is it going to solve the research problem that you have identified at the first? Or you may have to update or modify your research problem with reference to what you are getting, or updated yourself with journal public, because journal is a very good source of updating your knowledge base. Books are always not that helpful. So do you have to update your research problem? And for that, have you identified all the possibilities of research gap and data collection technique and study area, or the building typology that you have to survey, or the people that you have to survey, the sampling design? Have you identified that? All are part of this research design. And as I am saying again and again, your research design is not fixed. It may be, or it has to be iterated time to time. Or you may have multiple research design. Your one research problem may have 2 or 3 paths of research. For that, you need to devise different research method. Take for example, you are doing take the example of that second thesis, the decision support system. So first part is you have to identify the historical data of rainfall. For that, you need to research, and you have to have validated information, because based on that, you will be proposing something. Based on that, you will say, okay, this particular part of city or this city has the potential to adopt at least harvested rainwater for at least 6 months. And that information you had got from some literature review, that if it is not minimum 50% supplementing your regular water need, it's of no use. So you see, you need to get one information, and for that information you need to have several other information. For that, you have to research again, and for that you need to have separate research design. Again, with that harvested rainwater, what you are going to do? What are the potential end users that particular resident of Kolkata is going to adopt? Are they ready to adopt the potable users or non-potable users? How will you tell? Either you have to go for pilot study, or you have to take example of previous literature study. Any which ways, you have to take that excerpt from that. Then you're proceeding further. If that is non-potable, then which type of buildings are going to use that, and what is the priority? Because prioritization is basis of research. So you are prioritizing which building are going to adopt that, which building are going to adopt which type of non-potable uses. So all this are part of that same single research. Next. So this is the final takeout. The good research design, it should be neutral. All research, like what is theory? It's a philosophical outcome, that you have assumption, you have presumption, you have your limitations, and on basis of that, you have derived something. And that final outcome or the final result is applicable to similar environment or similar situation where the same presumptions are maintained. In that controlled environment, the same thing. So any research design has to be neutral. It should not have any bias from researchers' end. That is the foremost thing that a researcher must take into account. A researcher must not be biased with his personal thoughts or his personal beliefs to the research outcome. So it should be neutral. Second, it should be valid. Whatever data you have used, it should be valid. If it is to be published in terms of PhD thesis or master's thesis or any academic or any professional work, any working paper per se, it has to be a validated source of information. It should be reliable. Whatever your analysis is, there is no gap, there is no shortcut adopted. So your final outcome should be reliable. And as a whole, the research design has to be reliable, that there is no shortcut planned. It can be generalized, the third point, the fourth, final and last point. Because the idea, as I am saying, that it has to be applicable to the similar situation universally. Next, please. So on that framework, taking the clue from that table, you can finally derive your own question that will give you a flow chart or a diagram or a bar chart or a pie chart, whatever your idea of expression to draw your research design. Sometimes it is in your mind, yes, I know what is my research and how will I collect the data, how will I do the site survey and all, how will I choose the building, how will I take the informants. All are in our mind. Maybe we always don't put it in pen and paper or digitally, but it is wise to put it, because it will give you a track, it will guide you to further process or further steps without wasting any time, because time is everything. Next. Already stated, research design is an iterative process, and you may need multiple research design side by side to accomplish your task. Next. So as I am saying, if you could have understand a bit of my words, then you must be familiar what I am trying to say. It's not always that everyone will give you this input. This is you who will be the last 11th point, that you will be critical about yourself. That this case study is similar to this because this is the variable or this is the aspects that they have taken, and this is the commonality of failure. This is different. This is related to this particular point. So this we do, always we do, but without having inscripted or having written down all those, what we call a mind map. And that mind map is a, what should I say, a clue to the treasure hunt. The treasure, ultimately you find that final outcome of your problem. It is very important. As I am saying, we all are not sure what will be the final outcome at the beginning of the research, maybe at the middle of the research. And as we are not very sure, the title, the abstract, the keywords are still floating. And it is a research is always a continuous process. And you may have to refine your idea of how to approach, or how will you accomplish that research problem with best solution with your wisdom, should be updated or refined time to time based on the input you are getting. You cannot be standalone researcher. Research is always a teamwork, and here the team means the similar work that already had been done all over the world. Similar kind of case studies. You may say, I'm doing some research studies in the Indian context. Why should I take example from other states? Maybe the context may be different, but the situation may be same. Maybe the acceptance of people of using the non-potable harvested rainwater may be the same. That you have to analyze, that you have to get into. Unless you go into that's why previous day Dr. Pillai was saying again and again, it's about experiencing. Like Laurie Baker has to devote whole of his life to establish that concept. It's an experiential journey. And during that time, it is not that he was very rigid about his concept. It's always refining. It's not with Laurie Baker per se, any of the professionals who are researching in their field. Until and unless you are flexible, you are updated, you don't know what is going around you, what are the similar works are going on. It's not a foolproof research. Next. Similar kind of questions and testing your knowledge base or testing the research, what should I say, the solidity of the base of, solidity of the research is very important. Next. Sometimes when we are doing a research, sometimes we are also referring the non-scholarly knowledge. What is meant here as non-scholarly knowledge? The traditional knowledge or the cultural values. That is not written. You may not get that thing from anywhere, but as a cultural member of that particular community, these are some traditional knowledge that are passed on generation to generation. That may be a base for your philosophical output. Next. Type of research design. I should be very quick. There are majorly three type of researches or approaches that are carried out: exploratory, descriptive, and causal. As the name suggests, exploratory, you are exploring; descriptive, you are studying case, you are taking sample, you are studying them; and causal, you have cause and effect relationship. Next. So exploratory research is basically used for gaining background information. You need to define terms, problems and hypothesis clarification, and research priorities. Next, please. A type of different methods by which you can do exploratory research. As I have already stated, secondary data, experience survey, case study, focus group analysis. Next, please. So it is giving you a background information. It can be, it's a flexible approach that can address different research question of different type, what, why, and how. It establish research priorities because you study several things at a time. Next, the limitation of the study, it's generally utilizes small sample sizes, leading to only tentative results that are limited value in decision making. Next, case study. It's an in-depth study where you find similar similar context and similar model or similar theory that is applied already in some other project in other parts of the world or in your country. So basically, the pros of this case study is to understand a complex issue through detailed contextual analysis, limited number of events or conditions and their relationship. It's very applicable in our context in case of architecture and planning theses and other researches. We do it very often. Can apply a various methodology and approach, extend experience and add strength to your already done research, because you know what are the best management best practices that are going on and what are the failure, that what are the cause of the failure that leads the project to. Next, I mean, it's already validated situation that you have been to. So maybe the limitation may be in your case the number may be very small or may offer very limited amount of study based on the attributes you are working on. Some, as I am saying, data might not be archived, so you may not access to the real-time data and all. Next, please. Historical design, as we all do. The historical study is very important. It is a timeline study. It's very important to develop any theory. So we all do it, and approaching to this research design has different modality for different type of researchers, but for the better understanding and for the knowledge base, to strengthen your knowledge base, it's very important to do this type of research for your particular field of study. Next, the limitation is the historical study has limited input for your further research outcome. So that part may be concise to as small as possible, and as it is very time consuming and very strenuous, so one needs to be very cautious about it. Next, please. Philosophical design, as we all know, it's not a particular design, but it's deriving a philosophy, or it's discussing a certain proposition in a manner that many of the pragmatic decision may be incorporated to that proposition, so that final outcome is successful. Next. So it has some pros and cons. Sometimes it is applied to some basic, so some of the decision making processes with the wisdom of a group of people, and it can be discussed as a group for general guiding principles and all. The limitation of this is very limited to specific ideas, so it may be challenged over time. Next is descriptive research, which answers questions to who, what, where, and when and how. For this, study finding for a larger population, and if the study we need to study a larger population. Descriptive research can be different kind. Next. As I'm saying, descriptive research can be different kind. It can be cross-sectional. I mean, for a certain it gives you a sort of a picture or image of a particular section of your research subject for a particular time slot, or for a particular moment. Cross-sectional, longitudinal, these are the different approaches of descriptive design. And the positive aspects of this research design is it is used as a pre study to any research design to get an idea and to prioritize your further steps. It can yield data which is available at that point of time. Next. The limitation is many a time it does not have a definite answer to your to prove or disprove your hypothesis. Descriptive function of research is heavily dependent on instrumentation for measurement and observation. So the infrastructure portion is also very important, and your competency and your access to that particular infrastructure is very important in this particular approach of research. Next. Cross-sectional study. It's one point in time, so we can call it a snapshot. Next. So cross-sectional study can be used with no time dimension. Why am I saying time dimension? Because the time factor, the over the time change is not applicable for the study. Second thing, the study can be used if you intervene something and you want to see the changes at some point of time, like you have introduced a policy or something, and you want to see how the people's behavior changes at that point of time, or how the not changes, you cannot see the changes, how the people behave to that policy. You can see that through this cross-sectional design. If you want to see a zone-wise difference of your subjects, then you randomly you can see how this zones acts than that zone. So you can take that particular zone as your priority basis or your pilot study. So that way cross-sectional survey is used, cross-sectional design is useful. Next. So it is giving giving you idea of different phenomenon happening over the different context at same point of time, so you can prioritize your design if you are going to that direction. Using data from a large number of subjects, as you are getting a cross section, you are not taking timeline study, so you can go for that, and it will give you the observation input for your for the choice of the sample, and for the what population or what type of subjects you will choose in your study. The limitation is you have to be very prompt and very judgmental about what cross-sectional study you will take. That way, your judgment, your pragmatic approach is very important here, and it becomes a sort of subjective to the particular researcher. That's the major limitation of it. It is static, as we are taking a single point cross section, so it is not time, it doesn't have any time dimension, so it's very static, and it cannot be used for cause and effect. But because for cause and effect you need some time difference, you need some time, you need some pause, that okay, we have intervened this and we have got this data, time, cause and effect. Next please. Also, there is no scope for follow-up things. Longitudinal studies, when you are studying, same thing, just the opposite, when you are studying over a period of time. Next. So as we have said, if you are taking samples over the time, how the difference had been made in the building facade, or in the change of people's behavior, or the change in a public space, sort of a thing, you can go for this longitudinal research design. Next please. Sorry, stay back. The pros are it can allow the analysis of a duration for a particular phenomenon, how this phenomenon occur over the years, or over the 10 years, over 30 years, or 50 years, even for 100 years, like occurrence of different climatic phenomenon. We need to cover them for longer period of time. Enables survey researchers to grow. The cause and effect relationships are established, as we are taking account of the difference or change from one time to the another. Next. It also gives you flexibility to use data from previous researcher, and what is their outcome, and how your study is going to be incorporated, and it can be the outcome may be different, but the limitation of this process is like if the data is collected 10 years back, the same simulated, the same environment is not there. You need to simulate the environment for that, and then you need to collect the data, because over the time the context may have changed, the environment may have changed. So the idea of getting the data, the dynamic data or the change of data, sometimes it is getting error because of this limitation. So we need to be very conscious which type of data we are collecting through which approach. Next please. Observational design. This we more or less do always in our study. There we are observing in terms of physical observation, remote observation, secondary observation. These are the type that we use in this research design. Next. So this is the back, please. Back, please. The pros of this study is it's flexible, as you can choose your own sample size or your study area. The researcher can take depth of information during this observation, because the design may change according to the as the study progresses. So if you see interrelationship between the variable which you haven't considered, you may incorporate them. So it's obviously so you are approaching for a real-time solution, and it's very easy to formulate by the researcher. But the negative point is, next is, reliability of data is very low, because as the researcher is a bit biased of modifying the methodology time to time, and it's his or her perspective to see the things as maybe the researcher want to see. So there may be some sort of influence of the researcher perspective comes to this final outcome. Next. Next. So these are two terms which we need to understand. If the demography are matched to some larger entity, implying representativeness, we called it discontinuous panels. Next. And if it is matching to your context, we call it continuous panels. Next. 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 The third way of doing research is causal research. Causal research can be adopted when you are sort of doing some experiment. Experiment can be lab based, experiment can be field based. So if you are doing that particular experiment, you are actually adopting this causal, the cause and effect relationship to establish your research. Next. Next. So the last slide says, back to the last slide, please. The experiment is what? When you are trying to establish relationship between dependent and independent variable. Here the terms comes as extraneous variables, which are the variables which have the effect on both, like dependent and independent variable, with the implication of manipulating the outcome of the same. So we need to control the effects of this extraneous variable. Take for example, if the temperature rises, I mean the weather temperature rises, then two things changes. One is consumption of ice cream increases. Number two, number of sunburn increases, or number of heat stroke increases. So number of temperature rises, if we consider this as extraneous variable, so number of heat stroke and number of consumption of ice cream, the dependent and independent variables. If one rises, if the heat stroke rises, does the sell off or the consumption of ice cream rises? So can we establish a relationship in between them? Is that temperature is acting as an extraneous variable? So we need to control that. We need to say, in this temperature, particular range of temperature, you should define, you should limit yourself. Then you say whether there is any relationship in between these two variables. This is what an extraneous variable is. An experiment is always about establishing this relationship, the relationship between dependent and independent variable, and with a control environment. Lab environment, inside a lab, and nowadays when you are doing field research, we call it urban lab. You are taking urban area as your laboratory. There also you need to control some situation. You have to limit or you have to assume some situation so that your experiments results are not affected. Next. Sorry, it's a repetition of the first thing. Next. So we know what is independent variable next, and dependent variable. What is independent variable? Independent variable which is independent of manipulation. If you manipulate those independent variable, the dependent variable is dependent on the independent one, and the relationship formula or relationship matrix may change. Next. Extraneous variable, discuss. Next. Experimental design, next. Sometimes you need to test your variable pre-test, and sometimes it is post-test. Means pre-test means you are pre-testing the depending variable, how they are going to change the characteristics of your whole outcome of this thing. That thing is tested previously. You actually perform your experiment. And the post-test is when you see there is a change which is not going to happen due to non-incorporation for some other attributes that you have missed out, or you may incorporate in this thing. So that process is called post-test variable. Next. So one is true experimental design, when you are controlling the variable as per the need of the outcome of the research. And the quasi experimental is, it's not totally controlled, but a certain amount of control factor is imposed to get the final outcome of the result. Next. So as we are saying, the control group and the experimental group. The experimental group is that on which you are going to perform your experiment, and based you will, and the control group is that which is the benchmark or the scale of it with which you are going to compare with the experiment what is the change that is happening. take for example, if you want to see whether the coffee is really increasing your memory or really sustaining your memory or not, you will take two groups of people. You will give one group of people amount of caffeine or coffee, so that is your presumption that they will take a cup of coffee for 7 days, and then you take a test of then you take a memory test, and you will see how the control group that is without the coffee and the experimental group with the coffee perform. Then you will finally come to your conclusion. Okay, then if we give coffee to this age group, or if coffee to this particular group of people, this is my experimental group and this is my control group. You can see there is no difference. You can see there is a difference. You can see it's inconclusive. You cannot say that coffee is actually increasing or sustaining your memory. Next, please. Next. So experiment is valid if the following is true. The observed change in the dependent variable is due to the independent variable, and the result of the experiment can be applied to the real world outside the experimental setting. And that is what our final goal is. So that the outcome of our research, maybe it is in terms of a lab experiment or the field experiment, maybe we are experimenting with the building material, maybe we are experimenting with people's behavior, maybe we are experimenting with some other things, maybe we are experimenting with urban infrastructure, maybe we are experimenting with resilience of urban infrastructure. So how that can be implemented outside that simulated environment or that experimental setting. Next, please. So this is the two terms which are to assess the validity of experiment. One is internal validity and another one is external validity. Internal validity means the relationship that you have that the researcher had expected with the controlled group and experimental group, that is obtained. And the external validity is when this result can be applicable to the real world. Sometimes the lab results are not applicable to real world. That's why it's an iterative process. When you see that it is not working in the real world, you may have to come again and do the experiment again. Please go. Please, next. So action research or the field research, as I am saying, it is a solution-driven research, and many of the external aided agencies are doing this research first on pilot basis, then it is rolled out on a larger scale. Next, please. As I am saying, it's a time-consuming and money-consuming thing. So it's a complex to conduct until and unless there is you have specific time and specific mission to do it. Next. Sequential design is, as I'm saying, if sequences, you have sequenced the task so that one is prerequisite for the next session. That is called the sequential design. And the result of the previous outcome is having impact on the next thing. Next. So it has limitless options, agreed, but it is very workforce or very labor intensive, very you need funding, you need specific infrastructure and time frame. Specifically, the time is the major factor over here. Next. I think yes. think I have come to the end of this.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you for sharing your expertise and insight on the research design. The platform is now open for questions. I would request all the participants to please put forth their questions.
Yes, I think it was very exhaustive.
Share,
And
please.
Yes.
Please go ahead.
Akshay, yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, good morning, ma'am. It was very comprehensive session. And this is Akshay from Symbiosis International University, assistant professor.
Yes.
So, ma'am, I'm not very clear about the research design and research methodology. So, can you please differentiate between, again, that as you put a case project of slum water poverty index, right? So, can you give the example, or can you give the reference about this project and differentiate between research design and research methodology? Thank you.
Research, I hope we all are, because we know what is planning and what is implementation. I hope you are from architecture background. So
Yes.
what we do a design and what we do implementation of that project. The design we do, the planning, the design part of a building or a project, or in a planning project, the planning the planning blueprint is the research design. It is not exposed to your reviewer. It is not it is your what should I say, guidebook. It is your guidebook to guide you further in your research. And what is research methodology? It is the implement. How will you going to accomplish that particular task? As I have said that example, like in that the research design may be, as I am saying, there may be 3-4 blueprint of your you have identified some activities that you may do. That is not research methodology. Research methodology is what is the final outcome. If you go backward, what is the final outcome? Is it a model? How the model is developed? Is it a result of some interrelationship of dependent and what are the dependent and independent variable? Where from you got that? From certain literature review. And how you have find that literature review? What are the basis of the finding of that literature review? What is the basis of the finding of your study area? What is the basis of taking particular this 4 municipality for your study? Why not the 5th one? Or why not the other one, the 5th one as a 4th one to be included in your study? That is your research design.
Okay.
Why you are doing this? So the research methodology is actually how you are accomplishing your research goal, how you are achieving your research aim, and how you are addressing all the objectives. That is research methodology. And how you are doing all those activities over the period of 3 to 8 years. 3 is minimum, 8 is maximum. That is your research design. And I'm saying again and again, you must not have a single research design over the period of your whole PhD research study. And this research design is the key of success, because it will save time and your energy. We all do some sort of rough work. Okay, today I have to do this. So that is my design. And how will I accomplish that task? Whom will I incorporate? Why will I incorporate them? That is my research design. And whom will I incorporate finally? That is my research methodology.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Any further questions, please?
I
Ma'am,
think
your presentation was provided us with quite valuable information and guidance
you.
to all the participants, and we appreciate your time and effort, especially in explaining what research design is, how it has to be rigorous, empirical, systemic, and valid and critical as well. We cannot leave the criticality part of it, and how it has to be generalized, what is it all about, why it has to be done, where can it be applied, and how it is a continuous process and refinement of ideas in the continuous process. Thank you so much for your insightful inputs today, ma'am, and for your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, madam, for your time and taking the session. And now I request all the participants that we have a short break,
Short
right?
break.
We
Yes.
have a short tea break, and we rejoin after at around 12:30.
Well, we will
12
start
o'clock.
sharp at 12,
Uh,
and it is a request that you please don't log out of the session. We will start at 12 itself. Thank you so much. Thank you.